Hi, this is Ted. Today I'm going to be talking about schools and the New Apostolic Reformation, Word of Faith, and other charismatic circles. They're very popular nowadays. I mean, really popular. A lot of churches start these schools. Some of them actually get kind of big. Many of them hand out degrees, so you believe that you have some kind of ministerial degree or some kind of counseling degree from these schools. But I want to talk about these because, and I've brought this up before in other videos, but I'm going to kind of just give a real quick summary of it, what's going on, and give you some of the beef that I have about these schools. All right. And why I think they are really, really contrary to what the gospel teaches us. All right, Mina Chang, I don't know how to pronounce her name, I think it's Mina Chang, in her 30s. This is how I understand it. I believe she was already in the White House, not 100% sure, but she applied for a high-ranking position within the White House. Her resume looked fabulous. She had been on Time magazine cover. She had spoken before Congress. She had spoken before leaders. She was CEO of a company. All these things. Somebody did a little research into this, I suppose, because she had a high-ranking position. They had to go through and double-check everything. Turns out the entire resume was phony. Almost everything in that resume was exaggerated or complete BS. Okay, let me explain. First of all, she had a Time magazine cover. She was on the cover of Time magazine. Turns out it was photoshopped. She photoshopped it and put herself on Time magazine. Secondly, Harvard Business School alumna in her resume. Truth, she had no degree from Harvard. She went to a 7-week course, and that's it. Maybe she got a certificate. I don't know. However, she did not get any degree from Harvard, but it looked like she did. Finally, she went to the University of Hawaii. Not true. The University of Hawaii said no. She had not been there. Truth is, she went to the University of Nations, a YWAM, Youth with a Mission, Charismatic school. Whether or not she got a degree from there, I don't know. Nowadays, you can get a degree from there. They're not accredited. In other words, the school says you are now, you have a master's, or you have a bachelor's, or you have this. But it's just that school. It's not going to be recognized anywhere else. This is what's going on throughout a lot of these schools, and there are hundreds of them now. They're passing out doctorates. So when you see some kind of charismatic leader pretty much guarantee if they have a doctor in front of their name, I have yet to find one with a serious doctorate, one that's legitimate. They get them from these schools that pass them out like toilet paper. And it's about as good as they are, by the way. They say, okay, you deserve it, so we'll call you a doctor from now on. And so you have some guy walking around calling himself doctor when in fact he doesn't deserve it. Did Mina learn her deception from this school that passes out degrees that are not legitimate, that are not accredited? But the world sees it, and they see that you have a degree, and you put that in your resume to get a job. You say, I have a degree, I have my bachelor's, and they hire you, and they pass up somebody else who has a real bachelor's from a real school that's really accredited. Did she learn it there? I don't know. I think what I want to say is these degrees are all misleading. I have seen the justification used in one of the websites from one of these schools that pass out these degrees, saying that the world respects them, therefore we should for the gospel's sake. That is totally bogus. The gospel is not dependent upon deceit. It does not advance through misleading others, believing you to have or to be somebody that you really aren't. The gospel wants to get to the core of who we are and expose that Let that be seen by the world. Misleading degrees does not do that. Now, secondly, it's not only the degrees that are misleading, the accreditation is misleading. Now, I need to tell you that some of these schools say they're accredited. But if you look into who is accrediting them, it's not the state, it's not the country, it is some group of these types of people who belong to these schools, who have their own schools, and give themselves accreditation. And then they set up an organization that'll accredit others in their way of thinking. So you go to the school believing that it is fully accredited because it says it's accredited on the website. And they tell you it's accredited. You go to that school, you put in 4 years, you're done with 4 years, and you say, now it's time to get a master's from another university. And that university turns around and says, you're not accredited. And you say, no, I was accredited. And they'll say, no, you weren't. You have to go through 4 real years of school. Now you're back to square one. So that person has been misled. This whole setup is so misleading. It's so deceiving. One of the websites I went to for one of these universities, I look at the university. It's this beautiful, large campus. And I said, something is just not right here. So I got the address of the university in question. And then I look up that address on Google Maps. And I put that little person down on the street to look at that university. Turns out it's this little tiny church in the middle of nowhere. In other words, people come to their church, sit in the basement. You might have 3 or 4 people, maybe 6 people. Who knows? But they all sit down there in the little classroom, little basement of the church. They get taught, and they do that for a year or so, and they get these degrees. And the website makes it look like it's a beautiful campus, huge campus. And who knows? Maybe they had a class or 2 in the campus, renting out a room. Sure, why not? And show the campus on the website. That is misleading. Is this how the gospel is supposed to be spread? By misleading people? By creating an image of who we are rather than the reality? The reality might not be good, people. But reality is what the gospel calls us to, not creating images for outsiders to be impressed with. They hand out degrees. Why? Because they believe that titles are important. So if you're called Dr. So-and-so, the world will look up to you and hear your message better than if you're just called Ted. Dr. Olson would sound much better. But I have no earned doctorate. So I can't say, and I can't legitimately call myself Dr. Olson. But I could. If I just start calling myself Dr. Olson, people will believe it. People will look up to me. People will think, he knows what he's talking about. I'll listen to him. And there is an element of truth to that. But it's not the kind of truth that the gospel calls us to. The last thing I want to say about this image control and misleading is that our standards should be above what the rest of the world is, not below it. This is Ted. You all have a good day.